A few weeks back on a typical Thursday morning, I found myself caught up in our usual hustle of getting the kids ready for school. The clock had just struck 7:30 when the frantic pace was interrupted by the shrill ring of the phone. I was immediately curious, wondering who would call so early. The caller ID displayed a strange area code which only heightened my curiosity. "Hello?" I answered warily, bringing the phone to my ear. To my surprise, it was Emily, my wife, on the other end. We had just talked the previous night, so I couldn't help but wonder why she was calling now. Emily works at a small marketing firm, and her call instantly grabbed my attention. I stay home with the kids and work from there, while she's always dashing about for her job at a printing company downtown. Despite our contrasting schedules, we managed to make things work and lived a comfortable life. Our home was a cozy 4-bedroom house with a swimming pool in the suburbs, and we were fortunate to have a wide circle of friends. Emily quickly launched into her story. Apparently the night before, while she was in the hotel lobby to grab a newspaper, her purse got stolen. "Please cancel our credit cards right away and order new ones urgently. I've already told Joy, my boss, and she's arranging for new company cards to be sent to me overnight so I can have them before I leave tomorrow. Shell also transfer some money to help me out," she said, sounding genuinely distressed. "You're usually so careful with your things. What happened?" I asked, feeling a mix of confusion and concern. Regrettably, I was a bit distracted and left my purse at the cashier's counter while I went to get some more reading material. When I came back, it was gone. The cashier said she was busy with another customer and didn't see anything. My driver's license was in there too, but the hotel has staff checking the nearby dumpsters. "If they don't find it, I might have to use a taxi for today's meeting," she explained, clearly frustrated. "Don't worry, I'll cancel the credit cards right away. Sorry for the hassle, honey. Hopefully, apart from the $1,200 in cash that was in your wallet, we won't have any other losses," I replied, trying to reassure her. "We can replace the other cards gradually. Thankfully, most of my makeup is still in the room, so I'll be prepared for the morning presentation. How are the kids? I miss the times when we were all together." Emily's voice sounded nostalgic, but I wasn't buying it. "Let me take you back about 6 weeks. Luckily, I managed to cancel the credit cards before any fraudulent charges could be made. However, her wallet, which had her driver's license and other essentials, was never recovered. I tried not to dwell on it, and life moved on. Today, though, I stumbled upon something that changed everything. I found a statement from Emily's Fidelity account while searching for our home insurance policy. This account holds an investment fund from the inheritance she received after her parents' tragic accident a few years ago. I've always respected her privacy with this account, but curiosity got the better of me. The inheritance was about $350,000, and I couldn't help but wonder how much it had grown. To my surprise, it had increased to over $400,000. As I scanned the statement, one transaction caught my eye, a $3,000 withdrawal from the money market account about 6 weeks ago. This piqued my curiosity, so I dug deeper into her account details. To my shock, I discovered she had written a hefty check to a local jewelry store just days after her purse was supposedly stolen. What on earth did she buy? She never mentioned getting anything for me, and I hadn't heard her talk about buying jewelry for anyone else. Sure, she has a brother, but why would he need a $3,000 gift? After some thought, I decided to turn to the computer and check out the jewelry store's website. I noted down their phone number for further inquiries. Picking up the phone, I dialed the number and was soon greeted by a woman who introduced herself as a store representative. After giving my name and specifying the transaction I wanted to inquire about, I explained that we had an issue with the purchase and were curious if there was a store warranty in place. She searched for the transaction on her computer and then asked about the nature of the problem with the rings. Her mention of rings left me momentarily puzzled, wondering what kind of rings Emily could have bought. Fortunately, the woman quickly clarified, "Oh, I remember this purchase. When she visited our store, she seemed very distressed and mentioned that her wedding and engagement rings had been stolen. She wanted to replace them, which was quite a challenge. While we searched for suitable replacements, she used the company's credit card as collateral and later sent us a check to cover the cost. Now that you've mentioned an issue with the rings, I'd like to assure you that our store provides a 90-day warranty. Is it possible that the diamond setting has become loose?" This was perplexing. Emily had spoken about replacing her wedding and engagement rings, but never mentioned losing them, only her purse. It took me a moment to process this new information. "Listen," I said to the woman on the phone. "I need to discuss this with my wife before making any further decisions. I'll get back to you later." With that, I bid her farewell, though she seemed somewhat puzzled. My own bewilderment was much greater. If the rings were in her purse when it was stolen, why would she carry them around if she wasn't trying to hide her marital status? While there could be some other explanation, my mind kept circling back to those disturbing thoughts. I realized I needed to uncover the real significance of losing those rings, or they would haunt me endlessly. One thing was becoming painfully clear. Those rings were in her purse while she danced with an unknown man. It had been several weeks since the incident, and Emily was preparing for another trip soon. I needed to dig deeper into her upcoming travel plans and figure out what she did during those nights away from home. If she was involved with other men, maybe losing the rings had been a wake-up call, making her reconsider her actions. The thought of discovering her infidelity terrified me, as it would likely mean the end of our marriage. I dreaded the impact this would have on our children. She was a fantastic mother, but I couldn't stand the idea of her having custody, especially with her frequent business trips. My mind raced, desperately seeking any clues about her faithfulness. What other information might reveal her actions during these trips? Did she have unprotected encounters, or did she insist on using contraceptives? I assumed she would use protection to avoid infections or an unwanted pregnancy. After all, I had a vasectomy after our second child was born, so she couldn't rely on getting pregnant from me. She couldn't trust the men she met to have protection, so she must have her own supply. But where did she keep them? It was unlikely she stored them at home or in the car, so her office seemed the most probable place. She probably took them with her on business trips. I knew she carried her work papers, laptop, and presentation materials in a large briefcase she kept in her office. If she had an early morning flight, she'd bring her bag home the night before and then pack it in a suitcase for the airport. This was a crucial detail. I needed to find a way to search her briefcase before she left for her trip. I hoped her next journey would involve an early morning flight, which would give me the perfect opportunity. I resolved to stay calm and act normal, concealing any signs of my unease. When the kids came home from school, I was busy juggling various tasks, which helped distract me from my growing suspicions. But the thought of her possible infidelity lingered persistently in my mind. When Emily got home from work, I found myself in a bit of a chaotic state. While I was making dinner, I managed to spill a whole dish of beans, creating a mess on the kitchen floor. Cleaning up and dealing with the kids left me looking a bit frazzled. Thankfully, she didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary. Once the mess was cleared and things calmed down, I greeted Emily with a kiss on the cheek. We settled down for dinner and began our usual conversation. I figured that with our routine, she wouldn't suspect anything. "So, another trip coming up soon?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Yeah," she replied with a lackluster tone. "It's just the same old grind. I'm not really looking forward to it." Her response piqued my curiosity. "If you're not enjoying it, have you thought about switching roles? You've been with the company for a long time and know a lot about its operations. I bet you could handle just about any position." Emily explained that she wanted to gain more experience before moving to a desk job. I took the opportunity to appeal to her emotions. "You know, we really miss you when you're gone," I said, hoping to make her feel guilty. "I know. I'm sorry," she said with a sympathetic tone. "I miss all of you too." Pressing for more information, I asked, "So where exactly are you headed this time? Will you be leaving in the morning then? That would give us a chance to spend some time together before you head out," I asked, holding her gaze. I was careful to keep our conversation private, aware that our children were close by. Despite my attempts to act normal, my anxiety was palpable, and my stomach rumbled, making it hard to eat. Emily seemed to take everything in stride, reflecting my demeanor. I wondered if she had her own stomach issues, but it seemed she was eating without much enthusiasm. Perhaps my concerns were unfounded, but the need to check her briefcase remained strong, as it might reveal something about her loyalty. "I'm just going to Denton, so I'll be leaving tomorrow morning at 7:30, she said. "I need something to keep me going until I return on Friday," she added playfully, giving me a wink. I responded in kind, trying to keep up a facade of normalcy. To my surprise, she blushed slightly. Her comment about bringing her briefcase home the night before her trip suggested she wouldn't be stopping at the office before heading to the airport. Given her seemingly genuine attitude about the trip, it was possible she hadn't been unfaithful during her travels, or she had become very adept at hiding it. I hoped to find out the truth when I checked her briefcase the evening before her trip. Emily came home in high spirits. She parked her car next to mine in the garage, looking visibly excited. This made me wonder if her excitement was because of our earlier conversation, or if there was another reason behind it. When she entered the house, she didn't bring her briefcase in with her, assuming it was still in the car. I was busy preparing dinner, so we sat down at the table. She casually asked if I could retrieve her suitcase from the garage after we finished eating. "Certainly," I replied, trying to mask any hint of suspicion. "Are you all set for your trip?" "Oh yes," she reassured me. "It's just a routine trip. My briefcase is in the car, ready for the journey. I'll just pack an overnight bag with the essentials." To maintain a sense of normalcy, I asked, "Do you have any plans while you're away?" "No," she replied. "The kids and I will stick to our usual daily routine during the week. Maybe we could plan something family-friendly for the weekend," I suggested. Emily's face lit up with enthusiasm. "That sounds like a great idea," she replied, her excitement evident. After dinner, Emily helped me clear the table and load the dishwasher. Once we had finished, she went to the bedroom to pack her things, while I headed to the garage to retrieve her suitcase. When I inspected the car, I couldn't find the briefcase inside, leading me to believe it was likely in the trunk. Anticipating this, I had already formulated a plan to access it later in the evening. When I returned to the bedroom with her suitcase, I casually asked, "Do you know where the car keys are? My tire seems to be losing air slowly. If I take it to the station, David can fix it quickly." For a moment, Emily looked slightly confused, but then reached for her purse and handed me the car keys. She suggested, "Couldn't you just use the spare tire? It's meant for emergencies." I took a firm stance. "Yes, the spare tire is for emergencies, but we have enough time to get this fixed properly. I think that's the best course of action." I quickly returned to the garage before she could change her mind. I drove her car out and headed to the junction station, which was owned by my old friend David from school. Pulling up in front of one of the service bays, I honked my horn to get his attention. David saw me and opened the bay door, allowing me to drive in before closing it behind me. "What's going on, buddy?" David asked, his curiosity piqued. "I had a tire issue that was supposed to be fixed here," I explained, "but I needed a little time to check something else." Noticing my discomfort, David asked, "Trouble at home, buddy?" I admitted, "Maybe," as I reluctantly opened the trunk and pulled out Emily's briefcase, placing it on a nearby workbench. I then unlocked it. David, seeing that he had a customer, said, "Well, I've got a customer, so take your time, my friend." Nodding in acknowledgement, I watched as David returned to his small shop attached to the station. I began to search through the briefcase with meticulous care, trying not to disturb anything unnecessarily. My hands roamed over the pockets on the lid, and to my shock, I found a package that immediately caught my attention. When I opened it, my heart sank. It was an open package of contraceptives, with about 3 pieces missing. My worst fears were confirmed. I carefully put the package back where I found it and closed the briefcase. I placed it back in the trunk and secured it just as David returned. "Did you find what you were looking for? What's going on?" he asked, his curiosity evident. "I'm afraid so," I replied, my voice carrying a mix of disappointment and sadness. "Mind if I stay here a bit longer? Maybe you could check the tire pressure while I pretend to sort this out?" David gave me a puzzled look, but agreed without a word. He was a truly loyal friend. While he attended to the tire pressure, I drove out of the bay and pulled up at a nearby gas station. I filled the tank, unsure of when I would do this for her again. My thoughts were filled with gratitude for David's understanding as I made my way back home. As I pulled into the garage, a heavy darkness seemed to settle over my thoughts, and panic began to swell, driven by a fierce mix of anger and frustration. It was almost impossible to fathom how she could betray our marriage, our children and me in such a devastating way. Amidst the tumult of emotions, I tried to focus on planning my next steps to secure custody of our kids. I needed solid proof of her infidelity and misconduct. Despite her failings as a partner, I had to acknowledge her role as a loving mother. The children deserved a maternal presence in their lives. While visitation rights would probably be granted, my main objective was to obtain full legal custody. She'd have to justify the reasons for our divorce to her brother and friends. As I entered the house, I called out from the bedroom, "Everything's sorted. Just a minor issue with a nail." "Okay, thanks," she replied curtly, still avoiding eye contact. Seeking comfort, I grabbed a beer from the kitchen and settled into the family room with the kids, who were engrossed in their TV show. About 30 minutes later, Emily joined us on the couch. By then, my initial surge of emotion had calmed, but a profound sadness lingered as I faced the reality that our once happy family was unraveling. To my surprise, Emily moved closer and nestled against me. Whispering in my ear, she asked, "Are you ready for tonight?" After taking a sip of beer, I replied, "I think so, but I have a stomach ache." Emily, her voice filled with sympathy, responded, "Oh, that's too bad, honey." She held on to me and softly added, "I love you." I instinctively wrapped my arm around her shoulders, grappling with a swirl of mixed feelings. Despite her betrayal, there was still a trace of affection from her. I couldn't help but wonder, what drove her to this? Was it a craving for excitement, or a deeper connection than I could offer? Understanding the full extent of Emily's betrayal might be something I never achieve, but the fracture in my trust was undeniable and deep. As we tucked our kids into bed, I watched her, heart heavy, as she kissed them goodnight. By morning, she would be gone, and while the kids had grown accustomed to her frequent absences, it did nothing to lessen the impact on me. That night, our intimacy lacked its usual warmth and connection. Emily, perceptive as ever, asked with concern, "Is your stomach still bothering you, dear?" I managed a nod and said, "Yes, but I'll manage," silently hoping she might reconsider her trip for the sake of our relationship. I asked, "Do you really need to go away again?" In my heart, I yearned for this to be just a nightmare that would dissolve with the morning light. Emily sighed and responded softly, "I'm really sorry, but this trip is crucial. I'll do my best to wrap things up quickly and come home by Friday. I'm looking forward to the weekend with you all." Her words felt like a thin veneer over something far more troubling. I sighed heavily and said, "All right, it's time for bed. You need to rest up for your flight. I'll shower now so I can avoid it in the morning." "Okay," she said, and as she stepped into the shower, a sudden impulse compelled me to check her suitcase. I hoped to find something that might shed light on what she had packed. The clothes on top were innocuous, but as I delved deeper, I found a collection of her most provocative lingerie and a small black cocktail dress that always made her look stunning. I respected her privacy and carefully placed everything back, closing the suitcase with a sinking feeling. Sleep was elusive that night. When I heard Emily stirring around 5 a.m., I stayed in bed, unable to muster the usual farewell. My heart was a turbulent mix of exhaustion and sadness. As she leaned in to kiss me goodbye, she asked, "Still not feeling well, honey?" I could only nod, my emotions too tangled to articulate. As the garage door creaked open and she left, I finally dragged myself out of bed and headed for the shower. I braced myself for the day ahead, knowing it would be a test of endurance and resolve. After sending the kids off to school and grabbing a quick breakfast, I turned to the yellow pages in search of private detective services. My priority was finding an agency with a broad reach, ideally one with a branch in the city Emily was heading to. I contacted several agencies and eventually found one with a presence in her destination city. I scheduled a meeting with them for that morning, hoping they could assist in gathering crucial information. Next on my agenda was securing a divorce attorney. A friend had recommended a lawyer, so I tracked down his contact details and arranged an appointment for the afternoon. I hoped this lawyer could navigate me through the complex legal process ahead. When I arrived at the private investigator's office, I laid out my concerns and requested surveillance of Emily while she was away. I provided a recent photo of her and detailed her travel itinerary to aid in their surveillance efforts. The investigator assured me they would monitor her activities closely and compile a detailed report once her business day ended. They promised to send the information via email to their office in Denton, with a comprehensive report to follow by Monday morning. I made a significant upfront payment as a retainer for their services, understanding that while they might not be able to capture every moment, they would do their best to collect any relevant evidence. Later that afternoon, I met with the lawyer. He explained that our state follows a no-fault divorce principle, meaning that fault doesn't need to be assigned to proceed with the divorce. However, given my role as the primary caregiver for our children, it was likely that I would be awarded custody. He emphasized that while Emily would retain substantial visitation rights, the primary focus would be on ensuring the best interests of our children. Additionally, our property would be divided equally, each of us receiving a 50% share. Alimony wouldn't be necessary due to our similar incomes. However, since I would have custody of the children, Emily would be required to pay child support. As for the inheritance Emily received, it held no significance for me, and she would retain it for herself. My primary focus was ensuring the well-being of our children. I instructed the lawyer to prepare the divorce documents, to be served to Emily on Monday, citing irreconcilable differences. I also requested that Emily vacate our home immediately upon the finalization of the divorce. The lawyer confirmed that, as the children's primary guardian, I had the right to make this request. We agreed that once the children turned 18, we would sell the house and split the proceeds. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of relief and readiness to move forward with my life and our children's lives, while Emily would face the repercussions of her actions. I chose not to address immediate concerns about our finances, insurance, or other legal matters at that moment, believing I would have ample time to handle these issues after the divorce papers were served. Given her inheritance, I assumed Emily wouldn't be troubled by our shared savings. When school ended, I headed home and caught the bus, anticipating Emily's return on Friday afternoon. I offered to take care of her laundry as a gesture of goodwill, but she politely declined, preferring to handle it herself. I couldn't help but smile, fully aware of her need to manage her extramarital affairs discreetly. Later that evening, as we settled into bed, Emily expressed concern about my ongoing stomach issues and suggested I see a doctor, noting that the problem had persisted for too long. I responded playfully, telling her I planned to try a new medication recommended by a friend to tackle my persistent stomach problems. I expressed hope that this new medication would resolve my stomach issues and hopefully bring things back to normal between us. As we embraced, Emily whispered that she missed me dearly, a sentiment that did little to ease the growing sense of betrayal in my heart. On Monday, as the kids left for school and Emily headed off to work, I received a call from the detective agency notifying me that their report was ready. I told them I'd be there shortly. Within half an hour, I found myself in the office, seated across from the manager who was preparing to brief me. The office manager handed me a report accompanied by photos that had been faxed from Denton that morning. He mentioned he hadn't had the chance to read through everything in detail, but a quick scan and a glance at the photos suggested that the findings were quite damning. I took the report and began to peruse its contents. The report, clearly marked with the subject's name, Emily Barton, provided a detailed account of her activities. Surveillance had commenced at 5:17 p.m. on Wednesday, June 16th, in the lobby of the Denton Marriott Hotel. Emily's identity was confirmed through a photo from the Marvel office, which showed her wearing a company badge. The report detailed her movements meticulously. It noted that she was carrying a briefcase when she entered the elevator, accompanied by a staff member who verified her arrival at room 414 at 5:23 p.m. Importantly, the report highlighted that Emily was alone at that time. Attached to the report was a photograph, labeled Exhibit 1A, showing Emily dressed professionally before entering her room. The photo clearly showed her wearing her wedding rings, taken discreetly with a mobile phone. The report also noted that at 6:31 p.m., agents received a signal indicating Emily had left her room and was heading for the elevator. This was crucial evidence that could potentially confirm or refute my suspicions. At 6:32 p.m., Emily emerged from the elevator and made her way into the hotel lobby. According to the report, she was dressed as depicted in Exhibit 1B. This photograph made it unmistakably clear that Emily was wearing a sleek black cocktail dress and high-heeled shoes. Notably, she was adorned with a necklace I had given her for our 10th anniversary. What was most striking, however, was the absence of her wedding rings. The photo clearly showed that she wasn't wearing them. The report continued with a photo labeled Exhibit 1D, which captured Emily in a close embrace with a man. They were sharing a passionate kiss while seated in a booth at a restaurant. The intensity of their connection was palpable and unmistakable in the image. At 8:51 p.m., the report noted that both Emily and the man left the restaurant. They then took the elevator back to her floor. Exhibit 1E, another photograph, showed them entering room 414. In this image, Emily appeared slightly intoxicated, but evidently content with the evening's events. Later, at 11:13 p.m., the man exited Emily's room and left the building. The report concluded with a detail of the man's vehicle, including the license plate number of a car registered to Michael, residing at 1424 Alia Drive, Denton. Notably, Michael was married and had 2 young children. As I sifted through the details of the report, it became increasingly clear that Emily had repeated her indiscretions the following night with another man. The report, signed by an investigator from Denton, revealed this second act of betrayal. This discovery filled me with a profound sense of anxiety and resentment. The reality of my wife's promiscuous behavior while she was away from home was a devastating blow, far beyond anything I had imagined. The fact that Emily had lost her wedding rings and still acted so recklessly only deepened my hurt. After settling the bill with the private detective agency, I expressed my gratitude and left their office. I made sure to take 2 additional copies of the report, recorded on a CD, to ensure I had them safely stored. Once home, I immediately contacted my divorce attorney. I inquired about the status of the divorce papers, and the attorney confirmed they were ready for filing. Without hesitation, I instructed them to proceed with the filing, and specifically requested that the papers be served to Emily publicly at her workplace the following day. The attorney assured me this could be handled smoothly, and requested her workplace address, which I provided without delay. My intentions were unmistakable. I wanted to humiliate Emily during the legal proceedings. Serving her the divorce papers at her place of employment would not only satisfy my desire for retribution, but also deliver a form of justice for her transgressions. That night, the connection between Emily and me was non-existent. She seemed to sense that something was amiss, perhaps suspecting that I had uncovered something unsettling. Although she didn't directly address her suspicions, she expressed hope for my quick recovery. She also appeared somewhat reserved, but I chose to ignore it and said nothing. The following morning, I woke up early after a restless night of little sleep. Here's a revised version of Part 17, with added detail and refinement. I immersed myself in work on the computer until I heard the children stirring. Once they were up, I headed to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. After the meal, I said goodbye to Emily as she left for work. She approached me for a hug and a kiss, but I responded with a half-hearted embrace, encouraging her to leave quickly. At that moment, I had a nagging feeling that she might have sensed something was amiss. As I closed the door behind her, I saw tears well up in her eyes, and she whispered, "I love you." Her departure left me enveloped in profound sadness, and I felt a strong urge to cry. However, I quickly gathered myself, knowing the children needed my attention, and it was time to get them ready for the school bus. Around 10:45 a.m., the phone rang, disrupting our morning routine. The caller ID displayed Emily's workplace. I answered without saying a word, and there was a brief pause as the caller seemed to recognize my reluctance to engage. In a trembling voice, Emily said, "I'm sorry." Then the line went silent, and I remained silent in return. Emily did not come home that night, and I wondered if she was continuing her deceitful behavior, seemingly indifferent to her family. While I knew my anger was justified, I couldn't help but question whether I might have been too harsh on her. The children, disheartened by their mother's absence, wondered where she had gone. To lift their spirits, I took them out for dinner at a McDonald's. By the time we returned home, the kids were exhausted and went straight to bed. The next morning, Emily called with a request. "Honey, can I come home to pack my things? Can we talk?" Initially, I felt a pang of guilt, but it quickly faded. I responded calmly, "Why don't you come between 9 o'clock and noon? The kids and I won't be here." Regarding our conversation, I made it clear that I would only discuss things with Emily in my lawyer's office, and only after she had signed, notarized, and returned the divorce papers. "Then I'll listen to whatever you have to say," I told her firmly. There was a sob on the line before Emily responded with a subdued, "Good." Shortly thereafter, the phone went silent once more. Emily signed the divorce papers, and 6 months later, our marriage was officially dissolved. It turned out she had become pregnant during her affair. Unfortunately for her, the contraception she used with her last lover failed, and her attempt to keep it a secret was in vain. Considering her age and circumstances, even if I hadn't discovered her infidelity through the missing rings, the truth would have eventually surfaced. Rumors began circulating that Emily had started dating again. I even contemplated warning her future spouse about her past unfaithfulness, believing it was wrong for her to deceive and hurt another person. During our meeting at the lawyer's office, I shared these thoughts with her. Emily pleaded with me to reconsider the divorce, emphasizing how challenging it was for her not to have unrestricted access to our children. I explained that my trust had been irrevocably damaged. She then mentioned that she had seen a psychologist who diagnosed her with nymphomania. Emily assured me that her impulses were now under control. Despite her explanations, I told her that her assurances were not enough for me. The fact that she hadn't sought help earlier suggested a lack of proactive effort on her part. If she had addressed her issues from the beginning, she might not have ended up in such a dire situation. As I left the lawyer's office, Emily continued to cry. Through a recently reconnected school friend, who now works at a nightclub, I learned that Emily had been seen at the club on several weekend nights. She frequented the place with different men and behaved provocatively, which was a far cry from the woman I once knew. I was profoundly hurt by the realization that my children had such an irresponsible mother. It seemed my ex-wife never fully overcame her issues with nymphomania. Then a friend of Emily's reached out to me, saying Emily was in poor health and needed my help. She had contracted herpes, but continued her reckless lifestyle. I felt sympathy for her predicament, but made it clear that I couldn't and wouldn't offer any assistance. Emily had made her choices, and now she had to deal with the consequences. As I moved forward, I began dating again, and met someone who seemed truly special. This woman, around my age and also divorced, had discovered her own ex-husband's infidelity and had zero tolerance for such behavior. Her strength and resilience were qualities I deeply admired. It was apparent that my children liked her as well, which I saw as a natural and positive development. I felt confident that, in time, our relationship might progress to a new and meaningful level.